My name is Tania Velasquez, and I serve as the Assistant Dean of Student Affairs at the Ammerman Campus at Suffolk County Community College. And this is By Design, the history of oppression on Long Island. By Design is a docuseries focused on the many stories of our past that contributed to shaping our landscape. While Long Island has a rich and beautiful history, it is also infused with stories, often hidden in the shadows, that have left us with a legacy of inequality and racism. This series aims to shed light on those stories as a way to begin righting the wrongs of our past. Today I'm here with Dianne Porter to examine the topic of dysfunction within special education. She is a board-certified behavior analyst, New York State licensed behavior analyst, and a special education teacher. It is important to note that we recognize that there are many layers to evaluate when discussing special education. Today is designed to start the conversation and have us begin thinking of what may be happening within special education on Long Island. Dianne, thank you for taking the time to come speak with us today. As you know, this topic is very close to my heart, and in full transparency, we know each other from before. So I just want to begin with discussing special education on Long Island. However, I think it's important to acknowledge that we recognize that there are layers to peel back. We are only going to touch the surface and just highlight that this is your experience and your experience within the last 30 years of teaching in the field. But before we begin, can you just let us know a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm teaching special ed, a district on Long Island for 33 years. And in 2007, I became a board-certified behavior analyst and also a licensed New York State behavior analyst once New York State got that licensing available. And being a BCBA has allowed me to work not only within New York State, but also outside of New York State. And that's when it really hit home to me as to what the discrepancies are and the disparity and what's available. And what I was finding is states outside of New York, parents did not have access to different services. So it made me realize why so many people were coming to Long Island and trying to get the services that their children needed. And I think that this is an important topic of conversation because oftentimes parents, when their children are just newly classified or newly diagnosed, are afraid. They're not sure what to do, where to go, who's with them, who's not with them. So I really appreciate you bringing this to the surface.
So you said in your past, when you were working with individuals that were in different states, that they wanted to come to New York. Specifically, they wanted to come to Long Island. Can you let us know, like, why Long Island? Why not Connecticut? Why New Jersey? Like,
well,
why
I think,
here?
Long Island because we have so much available. We have urban enough to have many, many different districts and much different types of housing available. So there's a varied range of what people can afford. You can't afford living in New York City, but you can afford to live on Long Island. And I guess the expression, you build it and they'll come, really fits. So we have many districts that are in Nassau County and Suffolk County that offer a great amount of services. So people are going to find out through word of mouth, through the success rates, through the programs that are available, what's there. So for example, if somebody moves upstate New York, there might be a good district that offers services, but if they don't, then they're going to have to cross-contract and send their child maybe a 3-hour drive away, where with Long Island, the districts are close enough that that's not going to be so much of an issue, if that makes sense.
Well, I know in prior conversations, and I know that you have said you don't want to mention school districts, which I will respect. However, we've talked in the past that there's disparities among school districts in regards to how they're offering special education within the district, what services they're offering to their students. So can we talk a little bit in regards to, while respecting, keeping names out?
So I think that some districts have a more affluent socioeconomic or demographics. So you have parents that have higher levels of education. They may be doctors, lawyers, paralegals, educators themselves. So they know the questions to ask. They know who to access, where to go. So if something's not within the realm of what they believe to be legal or a mandate, they know how to ask the questions to get what it is they need. Oftentimes, parents of children that may not be English speaking or may not have that level of understanding, they're not going to know what questions to ask. And a lot of times districts, because everything's based on finance, won't automatically offer those services. So that's one of the things I found.
Mm-hmm. And you know what it's just what drives me crazy, as you say. So let's take the family that doesn't speak the language. Okay, so they've come to Long Island, they don't speak English, let's just Spanish speaking. Mm-hmm. What is, and it may be easier to ask than, to be able to answer, like what is the process? How do we go about making sure this Spanish speaking family is getting the services that they're entitled to?
Well, it's going to depend on what level they get in at. If a parent gets in at the early intervention level and then moves into the preschool level and then the school age level, a lot of times the early intervention will help them. If you front load the services, the early intervention will help them get what they need, because you have a lot more different levels of providers at that. That's at the health department level. But once you get into the special ed school age, parents really need to, I almost want to say, demand what they're entitled to. They mm-hmm. need to be able to know, but I also feel that it's up to somebody within the district to be able to say, this is what we need to give these parents. I think that a big part of the problem, or not a big part of the problem, but something that could be more of a solution or avoiding the problem, would be have the people that are working with the parents represent the what the district looks like.
So let me, how do we hold these districts accountable?
For, like, when parents walk into a meeting, what is it that they need to, the questions they need to ask? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that districts, parents may not know this, that is a requirement, is districts need to prove progress. So if a parent is walking into a meeting and they're being told that their child is not performing the way that they need to perform, the parent has a right to say, show me why it's not working. Rather than assume that there's something wrong with the child, the parents have to push for the fact that the district should be, I don't want to say doing their job, but they have to prove that they're doing their job.
Yeah, we have to hold the districts accountable.
There's something in IEPs, individualized education plans, that's called progress monitoring. It's a law, and the districts have to prove that they're doing their job. They have to take the data, they have to prove how the intervention's working or not. So parents need to be made aware of that. I think that what happens is, if you're not in agreement as a parent, you're given a piece of paper that says, oh, here's your due process rights, you can go follow through with that. But even me, like, at first, like, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. Like, who do I ask? So I think that one of the things that parents really need to do is get involved with their local SEPTOs, right? Mm-hmm. And I almost want to say that there should be a parent member. You can bring anybody you want to your CSE meeting, your Committee on Special Ed meeting. And parents don't know that either. So say you have a cousin or a sister or somebody, a close family member or a friend of the family that's been through the process with your district, they can come in a non-adversarial way just to know what questions to ask because they've been through the process before. So parents don't even know that that's a right that they have. Like, you can bring anybody you want to these meetings. So it should be like we're having a conversation now. It should be something more that way than where you have one side of the table versus the other side of the table being adversarial, because it's a scary situation. Mm-hmm.
In full transparency, as I said in the beginning, this is close to my heart because I've lived this. My daughter is special needs. She's on the spectrum, and I am an educated woman. My husband is an educated man, and we were at this table and had no clue what to do. And I will say, I reached out to you, yes. And you were the only one. You were like the fourth person I reached out because you were the only one that would respond to my email of me asking for help. And what gets me heated about this topic is that in my personal life, I'm a social worker, I believe in social justice, and here I am, and I didn't even know where to start. So I have to ask, when it comes to advocacy and how, like, where do we begin? How do we begin to advocate for our children that are experiencing this?
I remember that time, and the person that was the head of our committee one time called me and said, after our long day of meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting, and after the meetings he said, you know what, Mrs. Porter, it's kind of funny how all of your parents are so well educated on what they're entitled to and what we can do. And I said, I don't know, they're just that way. But I feel like...
and what buzzwords to say, because it boils down to buzzwords.
It does boil down to buzzwords. It boils down to progress monitoring, boils down to least restrictive. You know, there's something called FAPE, or Free Appropriate Public Education. Districts are required by law to provide that. It doesn't always mean what's beneficial from the district's mind if it costs more money and they get something done differently, but parents need to hold the districts accountable. I'm telling you the words: progress monitoring, least restrictive environment. Those are things that are going to set, you know, the district to wondering, like, okay, what does this parent know?
You know, I want to take it back to, so I think we breezed through this in regards to holding these districts accountable. And I know we've talked in our prior conversations the overabundance of minorities in special education. And so how we're advocating for our students to get services. If I could just take a minute to take the direction of this interview in another direction in regards to how do we advocate for these students that maybe the district did not understand them or doesn't understand the culture, and next thing you know, they're in special education or doesn't get them. And in your situation, you're I can't say you're a high school teacher,
yes,
but you're catching these students that didn't even belong.
Right.
In special education.
Right. Well, okay, this is like, again, layers. So we'll start at the beginning.
This is just the layer.
So what ends up happening typically, or a lot of times, what may happen is the testing is not done in the language that the child is most comfortable in. Because the parents don't understand that, you know, it can be done in multiple languages, and that's a right that a parent has, but they're not going to know to ask for it, especially if you're coming from another country and you don't know what's available. So how do we get that out there? A lot of times, just as an aside, it might just be that one teacher that says this is what you're entitled to, or that one social worker or that one committee chairperson that you'll find that will lead you on that path. But what ends up happening oftentimes it's exposure, because if you think about where the more privileged people might have access to the computers, the internet, the trips and all of that that's going to build vocabulary and background, that will look better for what they can do in the classroom, right? So if you have children that have not been given that privilege because of their socioeconomic status or whatever it might be, it's not necessarily that they require special ed services, but they require more of an enrichment. But oftentimes it takes them being through the system before that's realized. But I also think that certain districts may be cited for an overabundance of minorities in special ed without realizing that that is what the population is. So there really is a two-sided situation there, but I do agree that there are a lot of children, whether they're because they're non-English speaking when they come here, or because it's a lack of exposure or a lack of resources available to them, are not truly special ed kids. But given the right circumstances and the right resources, they will get out of that situation. Does that make sense?
Now, you mentioned that a district could be cited with having an overabundance of minorities. If you could just explain, what does a district being cited mean? So
the state will come and do a review and say you have, they have a cutoff, like a certain percentage of students of minorities or whatever shouldn't be in special ed. But how do you decide? You know, so then this district will get cited and maybe put a district under watch and to make sure that everything is being done the way it should be. And I'm telling you that for most districts it truly is. The districts need to, they represent the population that they have. So, but then now what's happening now, because New York State is so good at what it does, especially Long Island, it's almost like punishing you for being good. Now I believe I heard that the federal government is coming down to really look at what New York State is doing, because too many kids are being classified or identified. I'm not so sure that that's the case. I think with COVID, we're really going to see even more of where the disparity came in, because if I had the resources to give my child individualized attention, or I would, you know, I could do what needed to be done, hire somebody, whether it was Zoom or coming into my home one-on-one, my child is going to be better off than somebody who did not have that available. You know, a healthcare worker who's working and their kids are home with whoever, they didn't get that bonus. So now we're seeing these kids coming into the preschool programs are really struggling. So I think
you just gave us our next chapter.
Okay. But really, I think that you're going to, across the board, if you interview multiple people in different school districts, you're going to see the numbers probably really jump up there. So.
Wow.
And we already have a waiting list for kids getting preschool services. So it's something has to change. So.
All right, well, you say something has to change. So in your dreams, say money is no factor, staffing no factor. How do we fix the dysfunction within special education? This is your dream. So
this is my
go
dream.
wild.
Okay, first, I would like everything to be written in a language that parents understand. And I don't mean their spoken language. I mean in the language of, oftentimes educators, a lot of times behavior analysts, we've been guilty of speaking above people. And that kind of turns people off. Like, who wants to hear how smart somebody is, right? Or they know more. I'm coming to a table as a parent and I'm looking for your help. I'm looking to build a relationship and not in an adversarial way. I don't want to come, I have 13 years with you. I don't want you to be angry with me already. And I don't want to have to feel angry at you or that I don't trust you. So I think that things need to be written in a language that parents understand. I think that why can't there be a pre-meeting with a parent before going into a situation to say, like, this is what you're going to experience, this is what the testing results mean, because you know they go through it in a 3-minute thing. This is what, and you're like, huh?
Yeah.
What
Those
is that?
minutes are 15-minute slots. So they tell you in 15 minutes your daughter is on the spectrum, and the rest of the language you don't understand.
And meanwhile, you're just processing this, and you're like, wait,
and
I want to
cry. And I'm still on
cry.
the first sentence, yeah.
So I feel like that would be in a dream, a perfect thing. Have an advocate. I don't want to say an advocate, but somebody that's going to be a liaison, I say, between the school and the parent that can say these are the things. So then parents are not going to go in demanding things if they can be explained why this may work. I also think that parents should get a parent member on the team, somebody from their SEPTO. If you have a special ed PTO organization, a special education parent teacher organization, that is something that can absolutely work to your advantage. If your district does not have that, I recommend creating one, because it's something where you can work with the special ed department, but you can also bring people in to speak and discuss and in a non, again, adversarial or aggressive type of environment. So I think that having a parent member with you or somebody with you at these meetings to hear what they're saying and take notes and to go over it. Nothing in a child's IEP or individualized education plan is solid. It's not set in stone. The IEP should be a fluid document. It's something that me as a teacher, as I see my child meeting their goals in my classroom, I should be going back into that IEP with the parent's consent to change the goals, to move forward, to say this isn't working, this is working, let's do this. And I really think that it should be more of a combined effort between the parent and the school. So in a perfect world, that's that's
a beginning.
That's a beginning. So, and again, I just want parents to know that there's resources out there. You know, you can, if your district does not have a SEPTO, find one that does. Ask around. There's plenty of good Facebook groups out there and other social media things that that can help guide you in the right direction. So.
Well, thank you, Dianne.
Thanks, it's been my pleasure.
I've enjoyed speaking to you. I mean, we've had many conversations we can go on, but as I said in the beginning, this is just a layer, just starting to peel back the onion of the different layers when it comes to special education. I think within this conversation, you gave us maybe the next chapter, 2 more chapters can come out of this, and I really appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.